Hi, morning. So this is a quick demonstration of how pipelines work for authorization and for flexible rules engines. So we had a look earlier at financial instruments and how they're configured and how they apply to authorization, but how actually are they used? So we have in our system a variety of different things that we can do. So one of them is business rules associated to a particular transaction. So here's one that we've set up. So where it's not pin change and balance inquiry, then we decline the transaction. So these are the sorts of rules that we can set up in the system. And what we can do is we can add new clauses to various things. So we can say that if the acquirer ID is not exactly a certain thing, 1, 2, 3, or whatever, then we can go off and we can perform different operations. And these pipelines are the things that are actually going to do operations. So we would send it off, a particular transaction off to work in a slightly different way. And that's how the rules engine works at a very basic level. It says, using a certain set of things against a transaction, send it off to be processed by a different pipeline. So what are our authorization pipelines? But that particular one there, which declined it, has just got a single component that says decline. It doesn't like it. So that's a not unusual component to have. So an authorization one, though, what we typically want to do is make sure that we're running in a database session, because we want, if the system crashes or something, we want to be nice and consistent. We perform some routing, we make sure we've got the financial instruments. So based on the incoming request that we got, go and look up the financial instrument. Sometimes we then want to actually make it so that the messages that flow through are augmented. This particular pipeline component says, take the from account from the database and pop it into our financial request. And then we can check the status of the financial instrument, so that we're now saying that if this financial instrument isn't in the correct state, decline. Perform a limits check. So you saw the velocity configuration that we had against it. So that's performing limit checks like velocities. It actually does other checks as well. So you can, against the financial instrument, you can configure lots and lots of different limits, and we can say why. E-commerce checks. So we want to make sure that we're applying the right 3D secure. So if we get a transaction in that's got 3D secure in it, we want to make sure that those values have been correctly passed in. Pin check. Make sure that the pin is correct, and perform pin change operations, so we update the database. So you've got all these various different operations all chained together that can be done one by one. Again, things like card security code to get an online transaction, pin checks if it's an in-person transaction. So all these things are made to happen one by one in the pipeline, and we don't have to have more. So if you're not doing pins, if you're not doing card security code, we just simply don't include those modules in your pipelines. The obvious ones, things like update account balance, just check, say that if we've got an approved transaction, we update the account balance. And that is roughly how it works. So we have just have this chain of operations going on that are available to you. So if I have a look into the documentation, so this is a particular project, so if we go into the releases, BP node, and we go into there. So in the documentation, what we've got is we've got a couple of, there's a lot of documentation, right? But one of the most important ones is the reference guide that's available. And that reference guide contains documentation about all these different components. So when you're actually looking at pipeline components, it will then tell you about what it does. So for the card security check, it checks whether it's an e-commerce key transaction. So you can then go through and you can have a look at the various different components that have been defined, what all the configuration options mean in there, and then you can see, what these various different options are. This is all tied together, so the same information is available in the user interface as well, so that those configuration parameters, you can find out what they all mean. But yeah, you might want to be able to look through various different components. And yeah, I think in overview, that is what we do in regards to how we pipeline, how we put together the various different operations for authorization that you might need. Thank you very much.